This video explains the step-by-step process of glazing ceramic work. Step 1. Dust off your project with a clean sponge. This will remove any dust or debris which prevents glaze flaws. If your project absorbs too much water, then your glazes won't dry. Step 2. Choose your colors from the test tiles. Make sure all glazes used on one artwork are the same temperature or cone. Step 3. Write down your glazes on your glaze documentation sheet. Next, you can locate your glazes by reading labels in the glaze room. Some glazes are in small tubs, while others are in large buckets. Look for the labels on the sides of the large buckets. These buckets are heavy and the lids aren't very tight. When you remove them from the cabinet, lift them up and straight out. Don't tilt the buckets. Step 4. Stir, mix, or shake your glaze. Large buckets are mixed with a very large mixer. Use the rinsing bucket to clean the mixer. If the water is too dirty, you'll have to get fresh water. You'll need to check the consistency of the glaze as you mix it. Melted milkshake consistency is too thick. Water should be added. Whole milk is a perfect thickness. This glaze is a little too thin, like skim milk. This will require multiple coats. Step 5. Apply your glaze. Most of the time you'll apply your glaze in a certain order depending on the application method. The inside of cups and bowls are done first by pouring, then the outside is dipped, then other details are added if desired by painting, sponging, or splattering. This project is a sculpture, so I'm not going to be using the pouring method, just dipping it first into one color. Use the tongs to avoid finger marks. Let the glaze drip over the bucket as your project dries rapidly. Most of the time, when dipping, you'll only dip once. This glaze is too thin, so I'm going to dip twice. Here's an example of a perfectly thick glaze that I'll only be dipping one time. You can tell the difference in the consistency. For the smaller tubs of glaze, you must shake vigorously. Then you need to check the consistency by using a utensil. You can tell that this glaze is far too thick because it looks like a melted milkshake. If the glaze tub is too full to add water, transfer it to another container. Then add your water, stir again, and check the consistency. When it looks close to whole milk, it's ready to use. To apply glazes from the small tubs, you'll have to use a sponge or a paintbrush. Dabbing with a sponge is the most consistent application method if you can't dip. Painting often leaves brush strokes, but is a very good method for details and areas that a sponge won't fit into. This project had already been dipped into the larger tubs and now is having detail colors added. But if your project is on the smaller side, you can use the small tubs to glaze your entire project. When you do this, you must use multiple coats in order to get consistent coverage. You can also splatter or drip another color onto your first layer of glaze for an interesting effect. You never know what colors will appear when you overlap two different glazes. Unwanted glaze drips can be scraped off using various utensils. Step number 6. Wipe off any glaze from the bottom of your project. Not removing the glaze can ruin your project and the kiln shelf. This can be done one of two ways. The first way is by using a small sponge to scrub off the glaze. Scrub until you can see the pink clay showing through. Do this in any area where your project would be touching something else. The second method would be to use a large, flat sponge inside of a storage tub. The sponge must be fairly clean and wet, but not soaked. Set your project down on the sponge and drag it across a few times until the glaze is gone. You can check to see if your glaze is gone by dragging your project across the countertop. Step 7. Place your project on the correct shelf. There are 2 areas in the glaze room divided by pink tape. To the left is cone 6 and to the right is cone 06. Step number 8. Clean up and put away everything you touched. Double check your area for messes. There are lots of materials and tools to clean up and put away after the glazing process. Always wipe down the area on the counter where you worked. Lids need to be placed back on the big buckets and then put into the correct bin. If you had to move buckets around to get out your glaze, make sure you put those away too. If you were the last person to use something, then you're the one who should put it away. Pour any leftover glaze back into the original container. The sides and rims of small tubs need to be wiped clean before putting them away. All of your tools, sponges, containers need to be rinsed clean and put away. Nothing should be left in the sink for someone else to clean up. The best thing to do is to always leave the glaze room cleaner than you found it. Congratulations! Now you know how to glaze. After a few days, you'll have the beautiful results of your efforts. Awesome!